Welcome everyone, and a number of familiar faces here in Thailand Barn, and to those of you online, to the 67th annual general meeting of Kent Wildlife Trust. Just one housekeeping rule for those of you here in Thailand Barn. We don't expect any fire issues today, but obviously if the fire alarm system does go on, please go out through the gates and we'll muster over in the car park. We are quorate, as I understand. We are nods around, which is great, so thank you. And just to note, we've had some very kind apologies sent through in advance from a number of members, and obviously those will be recorded in the minutes. So, but thanks to all of you attending in person and online. As ever, we're hoping that the AGM itself will take about an hour. And whilst I know it is really riveting, what hopefully will be more interactive and inspiring to you today is the fact that the conservation team led by Paul, Alison and Simon will be giving a sort of behind the scenes presentation around the work of the conservation and estates team after the AGM. So hopefully that will be much more entertaining and interesting for those of you here and online to join. So it's a new experiment on our part to try and engage members a little bit more in the activities of the trust as a whole, other than just the AGM meeting. So that's to look forward to. We have had some questions that were submitted beforehand, because obviously the annual report and accounts minutes were presented online. Evan will address those questions towards the end of the AGM, and given the time limits of the AGM, we won't be taking any more questions today on the AGM. Obviously, if people do have questions, then send them through online, and again, in the minutes we will respond to those. There will be an opportunity for open question and answer session on the presentation by the Conservation and Estates team, so that will be more engaging. And obviously, if there are any technical problems for people online, please do let Lee or Emma or Jamie know, and they will, I'm sure, do their best to resolve those. So moving on, in terms of the agenda, is this the right one? The up button. Sorry, Jamie. First, is it?
No, it's not that one.
No? Okay. Well, while Lee is there, we are. Thank you. I'm not going to press it hard enough. The usual format of the AGM, I will give an overview of the sort of report aspect of the previous financial year, highlights and some of the challenges that we faced there. Jane will then talk about the financial statements and our current financial position as at the end of last year, and then Evan will do a sort of looking forward presentation and then answer the questions at the end. So those are essentially the outlines of the AGM itself. So if I start the formal business, which is the minutes of the last AGM as to July 2024 were made available online. We do need a resolution approved by members to formally accept those minutes. So as with all the voting, if I could ask people in the room to raise their hand and indicate support, and for those online, I believe there's a poll option for people to give their assent now. So the minutes have been made available from online. Hopefully people have had the chance to read them, but if I could, as the first formal agenda item, ask people to give their assent to the minutes from the last AGM.
Show of hands for approval.
Thank you, Emma. Including all trustees, please.
Does anybody not approve them? So we can take that as approved, and those online. Perfect, that's passed. Thank you.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for that first formal agenda item. If we move on to the annual report and accounts, which again has been made available online. Hopefully people have had a chance to read that and digest that. All I'm going to try and do is sort of talk about some of, I guess some of the things that I see as particular highlights or challenges from the year. So it won't be an overview of everything in the annual report. But if I start at a sort of higher level, I mean, as with every year, I think the trust has been phenomenally successful and busy. And so there are a number of highlights to report, and just giving a flavour of some of those. If I think about some of our flagship projects, Chuff are now flying wild over the Dover area. As a boy who grew up near Canterbury with the sign of Canterbury, including the 3 Chuffs, I mean, it's just a personal, it's such a satisfying sight. So the Chuffs are reportedly nesting in Dover Castle, and apparently people have seen them flying over Ramsgate Deer as well. So to bring back such an iconic species to the county, I think is a testament to the many, many years of work by the Trust to restore chalk grassland and its habitats, and the partnership with Wildwood as well. So it's a tremendous success, and hopefully one that we can build on in the years. Equally, on the flagship projects, the work with the bison and Blean is continuing well. The impact of them opening up habitats is obvious. Without putting a spoiler in, the first bison bridges are in place, and I think that will only enhance the impact of the bison in the area. So that's been very successful, attracting a huge amount of interest and excitement in the work of not only the Kent Wildlife Trust, but the sort of idea of ecosystem engineers in general, and their use in conservation. So that's been really successful. On the land acquisition side, we were successful in 2024 in terms of purchasing an extension to Pole Hill in the Darent Valley, so an extension to the chalk grassland site there, which attracted a huge degree of support through the public appeal. So obviously a huge thanks to those of you either here or online who contributed to that appeal. That's excellent. That's extended that area. We had a very generous supporter at Blean Woods who allowed us to acquire Frightwood, which then extends the East Blean Wood area, and the acquisition of Furnace Farm at Lamberhurst, which is an extensive area that will allow us to rewild and restore those habitats. It's really interesting, and without wanting to create a spoiler for Evan's conversation, I think leads to significant areas, opportunities in extending that opportunity in the Lamberhurst area. So really, really exciting. Again, massive thanks to those who contributed to appeals, and equally to the very supportive donors who made this possible for us. On the advocacy side, I'll just highlight 3 things. Rescue Hodes Wood. I mean, a number of you will know that over 35,000 tonnes of illegal waste were dumped in the woods near Ashford, with a sustained campaign by Kent Wildlife Trust. Eventually, the Environment Agency is now cleaning that up, and prosecutions are underway. They had an enormous deleterious effect on a SSSI there. So that was, again, a testament to the work of the advocacy team. Rethink Sealing, you will be aware at the moment the National Grid is thinking about a cable coming in across Pegwell Bay. So the advocacy side of Kent Wildlife Trust is trying to argue for other options to take that away from disturbing Pegwell Bay onto less sensitive areas in the Thanet area. So that again is an ongoing advocacy campaign. And then finally, with great success, the London Resort, which was a theme park planned for Swanscombe in North Kent, which was first mooted in 2012. Superb site in terms of its biodiversity. Is now a High Court judge ruled the company was gone into liquidation. So going through the work of the trust, the local community, and many others, I think a massive effort to actually avoid what would have been a very significant adverse development in that particular area. So again, across the work of the trust, three very good areas of success. Challenges, I have to be honest, there are challenges. I mean, one only has to look out the door at the moment. The nature and climate crisis is quite obvious with the high levels of temperature we experienced both last year and indeed this year. So we are living in very challenging times. But then there are some other challenges closer to home. The If we think about across the charitable sector as a whole, fundraising is becoming far more challenging. And the increase in national insurance costs has clearly affected the charitable sector as a whole quite significantly. I think if you look at the environmental movement and charitable sector across the whole sector, we've had challenges in terms of uncertainty in government policy. Speaking personally, I still cannot understand why the government sees nature as a blocker and not something that is fundamentally underpinning sustainable development. But we have clearly challenges from a policy side. We have uncertainty with regard to whether the payment schemes under nature-based solutions will remain or not. So there is significant policy uncertainty in the UK at the moment, affecting everyone on the environmental movement side. And equally with the rural payment scheme, which is an income stream for landowners in general and Kent Wildlife Trust, there are challenges as to whether that payment scheme will remain. And then if I look at Kent Wildlife Trust specifically, and Evan will allude more to it, there was a very large grant that we were expecting that for various reasons got cancelled. I'll leave Evan to explain that a little bit more in terms of one of the questions that was helpfully asked in advance in the AGM. So there are a number of issues at the macro level and the environmental level, and the Kent Wildlife Trust created quite a challenging environment for us last year. What has that led us to do? Inevitably, like any business with a charitable purpose, we had to look at restructuring costs, being prudent on the costs and reducing and putting in controls where necessary. Given, like most charities, the bulk of our costs are in staff, unfortunately that led to a program of redundancies in the last year. Always regrettable and a difficult process all around, but it put us in hopefully a stronger position for going forward. And I guess my conclusion would be that if the trust was not exploring different ways to diversify income streams and relying on the traditional model for funding conservation, which is subsidies or donations, we would be looking at a very bleak future at the moment. And so I think the work that the trust has done over the past decade to allow us to take advantage of some of these new schemes, assuming the policy environment remains supportive, I think positions as well for the future. So I think it is fair to say that there were tremendous achievements in the year 2024, but equally some challenges that we've had to deal with as a team as a whole. You'll be relieved to know that I'm really going to be brief in terms of some other comments on the. You've got better fingers than me, James.
It's just adding points.
Oh, is it? Oh, I beg your pardon. I wasn't. Okay. Right. I just very brief. I just want to run through a few picks that might have been picked up in the annual report that I think are equally worth mentioning. Because we have a strategy up to 2030, which we're obviously midway through delivering at the moment. Some key highlights here. First goal, defend and restore. I'm not going to go through all these, and to some extent these are spoiler alerts. The Pine Martin restoration work started in 2024. A huge amount of consultation work with various stakeholders in both Kent and Sussex, looking at suitable habitat types to receive animals and trying to source animals. Spoiler alert, hopefully things will be moving on and can be reported at future AGMs there. On the Darent Valley, for those of you who know that area, beautiful area of chalk stream, chalk grassland within visual distance of the City of London. It's one of 22 national sites that have been earmarked by government for landscape recovery. Kent Wildlife Trust has played a pivotal role in bringing all the landowners there together and looking at ways in which they can enhance the whole the management of that area. So that's been significant and obviously builds on a massive degree of work of the trust and significant cooperation and coordination with landowners, which is great. That's right. Inspire and collaborate. I just really want to actually start by a massive thanks to Lee and his team on the education side. Engaged over 6,000 children in the year 2024, from schools across the county. Over 1,000 schools visited the visitor centres here and at Sevenoaks. And if we think about this is the generation coming, this is fundamentally significant. So huge degree of activity. In part, the reason we're not having the Wilder Kent Awards after this AGM is because of the success of the Wilder Kent Awards and the number of applicants. So we're actually running that separately. We're equally allowing corporates to join that scheme this year. So again, a real testament to Lee and his team in terms of building this outreach across the county. I would say for all of those, a tremendous significant achievement in 2024, available in all good bookshops in the UK and the US. Bison and the Butterfly book, which attracted a significant amount of interest in its beautiful publication, again with Lee's team behind that. And so huge amount of work on the education side, and equally on the volunteering side. I think reports over 2,000 volunteers supported the work of the Trust in the year 2024. Over 46,000 hours of volunteer support given to the Trust. If we think about how volunteering has changed over the years, I mean, now there's many more diverse ways for people to engage as volunteers, from obviously work outside, but work indoors on the drones, on the IT side. It's all of us as trustees are volunteers. There are many ways of volunteering for the Trust, and the support is hugely appreciated by all and everyone. And obviously, thanks in that regard to everyone who has given up time and will do so in the future. And finally, on the third goal, to strengthen and grow, and I just really wanted to hear, we all know it's tough economic times for everyone. I'm pleased to report that there's a 3.5% growth in membership of the Trust in the year 2024, for which, again, massive thanks to all those members who have remained members, but all those who have joined. I think that demonstrates the strength and attractiveness of the brand as a whole. We built out our corporate partnership work again after a few years of relaxation on that side, and fundamentally and equally important, we've spent time building our internal processes and systems to make sure we have financial controls and everything else inside in the Trust. So a lot of success from last year. Would highly recommend the end report as a bedtime read. It has a lot more information on all of this. And then very briefly to wrap up our subsidiaries, Wilder Carbon, pioneering an approach to helping people lock up carbon above and below ground through the restoration of natural habitats with high integrity buyers, hugely pioneering, still early days, but developing early signs of activity in Kent and elsewhere. Adonis Blue, the consultancy company, really has been at the leading edge of biodiversity net gain activity in the county. It's helped Maidstone Borough Council adopt a 20% biodiversity net gain target. We're profitable in 2024, with all that profit being returned to the Trust in unrestricted reserves. So all mission consistent work and profitable, which is great. And then Kent Wildlife Trust Enterprises, which is essentially holding all the income from other activities such as revenue from sales in the visitor centres or car parking or events management. Again, that all brings in unrestricted revenue to the Trust. So I will end, as I always do, with massive thanks, to the staff who are responsible for doing all this, B, to all you as members here in the room and online for your support. The volunteers who have inevitably made this possible as well, and all those who have contributed to events or sponsored or activities or appeals. I mean, a massive thanks. It's a collective effort, and that's essentially the report of the year. What I'll do now is pass over to Jane to give an update on the financial statements for 2024.
Thank you, Chris. And I just wanted to note apologies from Rachel Hoey, our honorary treasurer, who would normally present the accounts, but unfortunately wasn't able to be with us today. So I'm presenting on behalf of her, and indeed on behalf of all the trustees. These accounts obviously shared ahead of the AGM with all members, and are being presented today in accordance with our articles. They have been independently audited by our auditors, BHP, and approved by council. Somebody got the clicker? Oh, thank you. Can we move on then? Thank you. So I'm just going to give a very brief overview of the income and expenditure and of the balance sheet as at the year end. So on the income side, you've got everything up there. This reflects the business activity of the trust and its subsidiaries for the 2024 financial year, with a comparison as well to 2023. Just a word about the restatement. It says as restated for 2023. There were some adjustments identified during the audit process. The principal change there was in respect of 230,000 of credit notes, which were raised against prior year invoices in the consultancy business. So they were deemed material by the auditors, and therefore we restated the 2023 accounts. Steps have been taken to strengthen the relevant controls in the business going forward. Positively, the full year financial performance for the group was a surplus of 561,000. In spite of that, the ongoing economic climate, the associated challenges that Chris has already mentioned in fundraising have continued to impact on income generation. But income was around 2 million greater than the previous year. The income figures include grants to support some of the key initiatives that Chris has already talked about. So the Bison Bridges in the Blean and the redevelopment of the Sevenoaks Visitor Centre. And we also did see increased legacy income in the year. And linked with the membership increase, we saw membership income increase by about 69,000 in the year. Our income generated through trading activities has also increased year on year. There was one major nutrient neutrality deal secured through Kent Wildlife Enterprises to develop a wetland at Mystole Orchard. Given the fundraising challenges for all charities in the current economic climate, we do continue to seek to diversify our income streams, and we're focused on generating income through the various nature-based solutions mechanisms. We recognise they're evolving markets, and some of the uncertainty of legislation surrounding those has made development slower than we might have wished. So we do remain cautious about income potential from those sources. On the cost side, our operational costs did increase in 2024 from 7.8 million to 8 million. That's primarily relates to an increase in staff costs in our income generation areas. Our operational and support costs reduced over the year, and conservation costs remained steady in the same period. And as Chris has already mentioned, we've had that focus on cost control over the past year to allow us to make significant savings against budget while still delivering on our planned projects. That cost control, as Chris said, did include a rationalisation of staffing, and it does remain a strong focus as we go through the current year as well. If I can move on to the balance sheet. Thank you. Just picking out the key items on here, as already mentioned, 2.8 million of tangible fixed assets were purchased in the year. Much of that was spent on our nature reserves. So that includes the purchase of Furness Farm in Lammerhurst for 1.4 million. the purchase of land to extend the Pole Hill Reserve, and the addition of Fright Wood. And a total of 710,000 was invested in the installation of the bison bridges in the Blean. So some serious investment there in developing our reserves. Further investments were made in systems and communications projects, including the rollout of the new website. Across 2024, we saw steady growth in our long-term investment portfolio, which grew by 12% in real terms during the financial year. Those of you looking in detail at the numbers on the screen, it's worth commenting on the reduction in short-term investments. That reflects the drawdown of the £1 million to purchase Furnace Farm in Lamberhurst. Cash balances also substantially lower than the previous year. That's partly reflecting the challenging environment that we find ourselves in, and lower than expected income. And we have had to draw down additional funds from our reserves to meet cash flow needs. There is a very strong focus on cash flow management at Council, and we do have a strategy to replenish those reserves over the coming years. The Trust manages various restricted, designated and unrestricted funds. The free reserves, which are calculated at the sum of unrestricted current assets and investments, currently stand at 2.2 million, and those are the resources that really help provide stability to the Trust in the management of its projects and land holdings, and just help us support the ongoing growth in what is a challenging external environment. That was really all I wanted to say on the balance sheet. I can move on to the reappointment of auditors. So we need, as part of the formal business today, just to talk about the appointment of the auditors. So BHP LLP continue as our auditors. They have completed the audit for us over the past five financial years. The performance of the auditors is reviewed and recommended by the Risk and Finance Committee to Council. And we're just taking the opportunity this year, having completed that 5-year cycle, to do a market review later this year, really just to test the performance and to make sure that we're getting the value for money and the fit that we need with the auditors. So we will do that exercise later in the year. That brings us to the end of the report on the accounts, and I'm going to hand back to Chris.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. There are only 2 items for me to cover now before I pass to Evan, who will talk about the future. The first of these is the retirement and election of trustees to the board, the Council of Kent Wildlife Trust. Just by way of background, our Articles of Association, set a limit that trustees can serve a maximum of 3 terms, each of 3 years, so up to 9 years. And that at the end of each 3 years, they need to be retire and then be re-elected by members if that's considered appropriate. So in terms of the voting, the first trustee who is reaching the end of her 3-year term and is being put forward for a re-election is Rachel Hoy, who Jane just alluded to, unfortunately can't be here today. Rachel, by background, she acts as the treasurer of the trust. She has a strong finance, accountancy background, startup and growing business background. So the motion is put to you in the room and online to show your approval to re-elect Rachel for another 3 years. So if I could ask for, again, a show of hands in the room and use of the online poll, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, people are still voting, but we've already passed the approval.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. The next is standing for election, having been appointed by Council last year after an open recruitment process. something I think we looked increasingly favourably on to be more democratic and open in the future, is John Kirkpatrick. John has been on the board, attending board meetings in the last year. We're formally recommending John for member approval today. John has a long career in both environmental management and sustainable development in the UK and overseas. He's worked across sectors, in the NGO sector and private sector and for government on various aspects, particularly the built environment. And equally, John has strong governance background. He is currently chair of the Forestry Stewardship Council. So after, as I say, a due and open process, we as a board selected John to join the trust, but obviously we're putting forward John now for approval by members. John is here in the room, so he is there indeed. There he is. I don't know whether the people online have the benefit of seeing John in person, but if at that point I could ask for, again, approval for John to be appointed as a trustee to the trust, with a show of hands in the room and use of poll online. Thank you all. Thank you.
That can be very awkward.
Thank you, John. And thank you, everyone. Thanks for that. Well, as I say, we've got a very strong board at the moment. And my personal thanks to all the trustees who give up a huge amount of time in various ways to support the trust. The final governance item is actually for members of the board who are retiring, who are not seeking re-election, and that is myself, because I have actually now reached the full term of my time as a trustee. So I won't be standing again. This has been like my last time as chair of the board. So I simply want to say thanks for the privilege of having played a small, hopefully helpful part in the journey to date. But more importantly is to announce that we as council unanimously decided that Jane very kindly would take over as chair. There will be a note about Jane in the next members magazine, but by way of a very brief background to Jane, Jane has a long background in regulatory experience and compliance management in the banking and finance sector, Bank of England, Lloyds, Barclays. So huge set of skills and experience relevant to the challenges that we're going through as a trust, and a really nice personality that goes with that to make sure that's done in a very cooperative and supportive way. And Jane equally has a number of other governance roles that she's kindly involved in. And last but not least, she lives in Sevenoaks, so we'll have a close view of what's happening with the Sevenoaks Visitor Centre refurbishment. So this is more to note rather than approve, because council have really made that appointment. But I just wanted to say from my side, thank you, but Jane will be taking over from me. And then my last formal bit is we've got one formal resolution that we would like members to approve, which is an amendment, a special resolution to our Articles of Association. Information was provided online about this, but essentially we are introducing a Wilder Patrons scheme to the trust, which allows people to become sponsors of the trust and give money in a way that's designed to support the activities and growth of the trust. I'll become a Wilder patron and a number of others, and obviously we'd like to encourage more people to become Wilder patrons. But the word patron historically in the charitable sector has usually meant someone who has a sort of ambassadorial role. It's not necessarily linked to fundraising. Our Articles of Association at the moment say will be limited to 3 patrons only. We don't have any patrons in that traditional use of the word patron. So all we're proposing to do is simply change the articles to remove reference to patrons. It still allows us, if ever we wish to appoint a patron to a more ambassadorial role in the future, we can do so. But just to avoid any conflict in understanding between the concept of Wilder patrons, who are essentially people trying to attract and raise fundraising for the trust, as opposed to that more historic use of the word trust. So, as I say, the change in resolution was put forward on the website. I'd formally like people to approve the change to the Articles of Association, either through a show of hands for those present here in time involved, or going through the poll online. So, hands, please. Very quick, very helpful.
Just wait a couple of minutes.
Yes.
Not even a couple of minutes, a few more seconds.
Of course.
Online. That does give us enough.
Lovely. Well, just to say that we needed also 75% approval by members for any change to the Articles of Association, and I'm assuming that we reached that for that, which is great. So thank you very much. So that, in terms of formal governance business, that's it. So I'll now pass over to Evan in terms of look forward and then answering the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So looking ahead, as per normal, Chris has actually spoiled some of my presentation. Forgive me for going over some of the same points again. So I'm going to repeat a few things, but hopefully with a slightly different flavour than have been said before, because we do still face very, very challenging context as a charity. This is shared with the entirety of the third sector. So I thought I would share this 2025 report from the National Council of Voluntary Organisations, which basically summarises this as the third sector being at a crossroads. There is a hugely evolving context in which we are working, and it is not getting easier. It's getting more and more complicated, more challenging. None the least around the economic pressures that we're facing. Some of you will have heard on the radio in the last few days, the National Trust is about to make 550 redundancies. Macmillan lost 25% of its workforce. They then re-employ more fundraisers, which is actually not dissimilar to what we're doing structurally as well. We're putting more emphasis on the income generation side of things, because we have to at the moment, because it's so difficult to raise money. So we know that things are going to be difficult going forwards. But where I draw kind of hope and solace from in this is that what they also recommend is across the sector, they say we must be harnessing the power of innovation, collaborative partnership, and digital transformation. So those are the things which can strengthen us, not proof us completely against the headwinds that we face, but definitely put us in a stronger situation. And our strategy has been about, since we started running with it, doing exactly those things. As Chris has said, that doesn't mean to say that everything that we do will succeed in the time frame that we would like, which means that sometimes we are going to have situations where we are running short on funds and we do need to take action. That's the same as any business, but I would say that we have minimised the threat from that. Government policy remains a big challenge in this. So because government policy remains such a big challenge, and we've seen this really play out this year in this kind of species versus growth dialogue we've seen from number 11, Rachel Reeves in the Treasury in particular, kind of pitting bats and newts against economic growth, as if that is what is holding back the house building agenda. We have been thinking for the past 18 months very seriously about how we can start to counter this. And one of the great things about working with Kent Wildlife Trust Group, the trustees that we have in place, Chris' leadership enabling this, has been that we've been able to kind of do these horizon scanning exercises. We've been able to look at what realistically is deliverable through the Wildlife Trust Federation and the broader sector. And we've been able to take the lead on a number of fronts. So we've done that on the carbon side of things, as Chris has said, and we talked before at AGMs about wild carbon. We mentioned last year that we were beginning to look at this initiative, Rebuilding Nature. And this is very deliberately branded towards that, warding off and changing that view of species versus growth by looking at nature in a broader form and how it actually sustains the entirety of the economy. And without it, there are going to be no safe operating bounds for humanity in a rapidly changing world. So that is what this is about. And we've basically been simplifying things upwards, because one of the things we have seen talking to financial investors and others who want to do the right thing is that what the conservation sector has laid out for them is far too complicated. They don't understand it. We're all saying different things, but actually we're trying to say the same thing. So you've got RSPB with its strategy, National Trust with its strategy, the Wildlife Trust with its strategy, and they all look as if they're different, but they're actually aiming for the same thing. They're aiming for 30% of land and sea being turned over to thriving wildlife to sustain the economy, to sustain livelihoods, protect people against the worst flooding events, the worst droughts, etc., that are coming our way. And so this is how we're encapsulating it. And this, to me, illustrates the point that the brand is really important. So you'll notice wildlife is actually not mentioned in here. If we build nature in this way, wildlife will come back in abundance and diversity. We don't actually need to do much there. It will come. What we need to do is get the financial triggers right, and we need to get the institutional backing, and we need to get the political backing. And so this is all about people. It's for health, for prosperity, for resilience, for people. That's the sales pitch. Doesn't mean to say we're going to be doing anything different on the ground as KWT, but it does mean that we can get a whole range of different people behind us who we've never really worked with before in the way that we intend to now. As an illustration of this, the strategic nature network that we're advocating for with an increasing number of people across multiple sectors. I was talking to DEFRA and the Infrastructure Client Group yesterday about this. So that's National Highways, National Rail, the water companies, and they see this as kind of meatballs and spaghetti. So the big blobs and the kind of connecting bits that we need to have across the UK to actually deliver this strategic nature network. And the blobs, or the meatballs, as they were talking about it, are these nature investment zones. And we want the first one to be in East Kent. So that's what the team is currently working on. Within the nature investment zone, you'd have the northern bit would be the Blean Wildscape, which I'll come back to in a minute, with the bison at the heart of it. The bison showing that you can actually do natural process reinstigation across those big landscapes, which we need to link up. That then going through into Stodmarsh, which is the biggest reed bed we've got in the southeast, and that then being physically linked through to Sandwich and Pegwell Bay. And if you're going to have projects like this National Bridge one, which we may not be able to stop realistically, and of course is linked to clean energy, which we need, then they should be paying into something much bigger and better and making nature genuinely stronger to support the ongoing economic activity on which those companies depend. So this is the way we are starting to sell what we should do ambitiously in East Kent and elsewhere across the UK. And we can map the ecosystem services that will be delivered from East Kent. We can value it, we can get people to pay for it on the basis of the benefits it will deliver to society. And so what that gets, going back to the NCBO report about collaboration, this enables collaborations that we have never had. But it's also, it requires us to be brave, because it's working with organisations, companies that we've historically not worked with. I think we're now at the point, though, where we all believe that we need to reserve the right to disagree on particular projects with some of these actors, but we also need to try and make them to do better at the higher level. If we don't do that, we will not change the situation. We will not get nature back at the scale we know is now required. So if you look across the tiles here, you will see that, you know, we have some quite big names signing up. In there, we've got the likes of KPMG, who will be actually auditing some of those other companies on how they're spending money effectively on their nature claims. They themselves, of course, then have to do the right thing, otherwise they look critical. You've got some of the finance agencies who want to make kind of green finance work, who realise that they need this bigger collective investment vehicle, otherwise the money will not start to actually go into this. And you've got some of the big consultancies who will actually be working to put together, you know, the very complex projects that we need, alongside NGOs as well. And you've got Nature Friendly Farming Network. So we've got the chief executive of the Nature Friendly Farming Network who sits on the steering committee for this, because a large slice of the landowning community do not subscribe to the NFU's view that there's this kind of food security versus nature dichotomy. A lot of farmers think we need to be able to need both. And they're seeing this as a way of cutting through from that as well. So this is really about collaboration, and collaboration for me then goes to diversity. You know, collaboration with unlikely partners is a form of really useful diversity that we need to harness to deliver our mission better. And that then goes right down to our staff as well. You know, we need diversity within our staff because we need a diversity of thought. Diversity of thought means stronger products, more impact. So I was challenged the other day by a member as to why we had, you know, backed the Pride event in Canterbury. Well, that's the reason, because actually, you know, we need diversity, a true diversity of people working for us and with us across society, and a true diversity of organisations, companies, and all the rest of it. We have to create these bridges, if you like, between sectors and between people to be successful. That's what Matthew Said advocates through the book on the top right, which is called Rebel Ideas. I don't normally buy into this kind of thing, but Rebel Ideas is a brilliant book and it illustrates the evidence of why diversity of thought is so important for success. We have to learn from this. So we are doing a lot of what the NCVO has been talking to, but then we are also maintaining the door open for our ambition and for the delivery of nature-based solutions on the ground to illustrate what we're talking about. Because we can talk about, you know, how nature will protect ecosystem services and benefit communities and all the rest of it, but if we haven't got strong examples on the ground, people don't see it, they don't believe it, they don't feel it. It's about feeling these things as much as anything else. So that's what Hoadley does.
We have a video which, Jamie, if you could just click play.
Click it again. Short
So
video.
this is Furnace Farm that KWT bought about a year ago, 140 acres of arable land, grade 3 arable land, that we're looking to progressively revert back to the kind of wooded, hedged, meadowy habitat that would have once been here. The really important part of this site is a mile eastwards up the valley is Scotney Castle, which the National Trust manage and which is grazed by KWT animals. And then behind us to the west runs about 3 miles of land that we now have an opportunity to also acquire and add to Furnace Farm. And that would provide us with a contiguous area of wilded landscape stretching across the Kent-Sussex border, joining up with Wadhurst, Ormsby, Water. So areas like this sit in a landscape that is a really interesting landscape. As you can see, there are hedges, there are woods, there are still these remnant areas of what was once here. But these arable areas in between, they are little deserts for wildlife. This is grade 3 agricultural land. It's not particularly productive land. And so it's hard to farm. It's hard to get good crop off it. And actually there is a greater good, a greater public good through actually managing these sites through a nature conservation lens and being able to actually think about how you use these sites to store greater carbon, to provide flood retention. The River Tees runs behind us through the valley. There's all sorts of opportunities here to do more and to buffer Furnace in the landscape and begin to connect it up with other projects in this area. So here we're looking at taking the arable land back to pasture. We're looking at doing grazing in sort of low intensity numbers with our longhorns and other animals, reinstate some of the hedges, begin to allow the woodland shores to grow out and spread and join up, encourage more public access in the areas we want people to be visiting, and use it as a showcase where we can actually tell the story of how you can take an area like this and wild it back into a much more natural set of habitats.
So today, this is my spoiler, going to let you know that although the legal process is still ongoing and we can't say we have done the deal completely yet, we have actually raised the 1.65 million required to purchase the whole of the Furnace Farm extension that we went out to public appeal with. So that, touch wood, is happening over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, and we will then have doubled the size of Furnace Farm, which all of these things obviously are made better with larger areas of land. You can do take rewilding approaches in a more effective way when you've got more scale. So huge thanks, well, I've got the mic, to all of the donors that we've been working with to make this happen. It's been challenging. The team's done an amazing job at managing the various relationships, piecing this kind of jigsaw together. It's been like playing 3D chess at times, but I think, touch wood, that we are there, which is going to be really exciting. And as mentioned in the video, what's particularly good there is that you can see the carbon value, you can see the biodiversity value. These are saleable commodities as far as the local economy is concerned. So providing we retain biodiversity net gain in law, which is a challenge at the moment under the current government, providing we do though, Furness Farm is being registered with Tunbridge Wells as a habitat bank. So any development that takes place in the area should be looking to buy units of offset from Furness Farm, which then enables us to put more money into being more ambitious and managing land on an ongoing basis. And the really exciting thing for me is the valley bottom, because if we secure the entirety of that site, there is a lot of river tees where we can do some really exciting restoration around the river. And that's something we don't have throughout the rest of our estate, really. The lady I was talking to, who's here, was talking to me about the fact she'd seen storks flying over yesterday. There's no reason to think by 10 years' time we couldn't have nesting stork on the tees in this area that we've just hopefully acquired. So it's really, really exciting. So that's how we're kind of keeping the door open to the ambition and also to the nature markets and demonstrating what we're talking about at the Kent level, which we can magnify upwards into this national dialogue that we're also creating. The other thing which exemplifies that is what we've been doing in the Blean landscape. The bridges, again, Chris has mentioned, we've built 2 of them already. We've got 2 more to build, and we are having conversations with some significant donors over the next couple of weeks, actually, to get the other 2 built. But that is one of the bridges which now exists in West Blean Woods to now allow the bison to get across the footpath. This is all about illustrating what is required to connect up landscapes across the UK to get natural processes going. The Blean represents half of our entire estate. It is of huge strategic importance to us. It sits within a 12 square kilometre landscape around Canterbury that is entirely there for the picking in terms of one of the most ambitious conservation projects in the UK. And almost no one knows about this wooded area. It is really bizarre. Only local residents really realise how significant it is. It's bigger than the Forest of Dean. We have bison now almost at the point where they will be able to roam across the 4 compartments we've constructed in West Blean without sort of going over the same ground as the public that they're not allowed to share the same space with at the moment. But that is going to enable us to then push to get the legislation made more sensible. It's also just illustrating, we've taken people to the bridges over the last few weeks and they just get it. Oh, okay, that enables the animals to get across the footpath. Well, how do we get them across the road? And we're talking to highways about constructing a motorway bridge within the next 5 years to actually get them to the other side of the Blean landscape. And there is money in the highways budget to do that. That's the gate being opened, so that's where they'll go through. This is the work that the team have been doing on actually creating the brand for the Blean Wildscape, getting people on site in the Canterbury area being proud of the opportunity there is, making the most of this brand. That's all stuff that we're working on over the next couple of years, but there's already huge excitement, including amongst the councillors and the local decision makers. So really, we've got everything to play for, and it's super exciting. And that's us standing on the bridge with some trustees the other day, and you'll see that holding in our hands, we've got a massive thank you to Chris West, because how could I stop talking, which I will do in a second, because I'm probably running over time, without saying what a brilliant chair Chris has been. He has been superb. It is because of him that we've been able to drive forwards with our ambition. We've done the exciting things that we have. I'm going to go back there. I thought there was some text that was going to pop up. You know, genuinely, without him sharing the trust for the last 6 years, I don't think I would still be at the trust, and I don't think we would be doing all of the things that we are. So I owe a huge personal debt of gratitude to him, and I'll miss him hugely. So on that note, I'll move on because I know he doesn't want me to make a fuss. But, maybe a round of applause. While we've got captive audience, I just wanted to also introduce you to the Director of Fundraising, Marketing and Communications. Sarah, do you want to come up and do this exercise?
Yes.
For a bit of diversity of presentation, if nothing else.
Excellent.
Do you want to stand up?
You might
I know,
sit
you
down.
can sit down,
You won't-
right.
Yeah, sorry, I will just retreat briefly.
Yes, so as Evan said, my name is Sarah Jordan and I'm the new Director of Fundraising and Marketing Communications. And I'm really excited to have joined Kent Wildlife Trust. I joined in April, and what's so lovely to see is what a passionate and expert group of colleagues that I've joined, but also what a wonderful group of members there are. So thank you all for being here today, both in person and online. One of the questions that we often get asked by members is, what else can I do to support Kent Wildlife Trust? So I've just got a few examples up today of the kinds of things, the kinds of responses that we give to that question. So first of all, we have a new life membership opportunity. So if you're with us for the long haul, this might be for you. It offers some new exclusive benefits, and Paul Jobling, who's just sitting at the back of the room for those here in person, will be able to talk to you about the new life membership scheme. If you've joined us online, please have a look at the website and do contact the membership team if you're interested. And as Chris referenced earlier, we also have our Wilder Patron Scheme, and what we're really looking for here is for people to support the work of the Trust on an ongoing basis. As both Evan and Chris have alluded to, times are really challenging, and in order to maintain the work that we're doing on the ground, we really need support. So if you want to become a VIP and get some access to private tours and additional benefits, please do speak to us about becoming a patron. Alternatively, if there's somewhere in Kent that really is close to your heart, if there's a particular nature reserve that you think that's, you know, where I like to spend my time, we do have an opportunity to sponsor reserves or sponsor plots within reserves. So a different kind of opportunity, but another one that might be suitable. And lastly, in terms of the sort of ways to support would be gifts in wills. I'm really pleased to say that we've partnered with Octopus Legacy to be able to offer free wills, a free will writing service. I've actually used Octopus Legacy myself, so I can attest it's a really easy way of either writing or updating your will. We do rely on gifts and wills significantly. It makes up about 20% of our income. So once you've looked after your nearest and dearest, if there is an opportunity to secure the future of nature by leaving a gift in your will, we would be incredibly grateful. And please let us know so that we can thank you properly for that. And lastly, just to say, one of the key things that I've experienced in my short 2 and a bit months at the Trust is just how much our members help us have a voice for nature. As Evan has referenced, we are at the moment going through a BNG consultation with the government, and we've tried to make it as easy as possible for individuals like yourself to respond. Every voice matters with this consultation. So if you haven't already done so, if you could take a few minutes to check your emails or look at our website and respond to the BNG consultation, I personally would be extremely grateful, and that would be a huge support to the Trust. So thank you very much, and I look forward to getting to know you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. So actually on that last one, can I re-emphasise that? So we do have very close links to DEFRA, and it has been suggested to us that we should absolutely get as many people as possible to respond on the biodiversity net gain consultation, because small developers, of course, will be saying, yes, we need to be exempt from this. Why should we do this? But biodiversity net gain is now the only way we've actually got for any small development to do any mitigation for wildlife. So if they are allowed an exemption, then basically we'll have local developments with no mitigation at all. So please do tell people that you know, tell your parish councils, etc., that if they want to see local mitigation, which at least provides some redress for the development that is being undertaken in your local area, that they need to try and help to make sure that the requirement for small developers to undertake biodiversity net gain is retained Otherwise, we basically lose that completely. And then it's a terrible signal to the nature markets as well, because that type of policy change will just make people think, well, how can we have any certainty about any investment, financial investment in nature? So it's a really big one. So thanks, Sarah, for raising that. On to some questions. So thank you very much in advance for submitting these questions. The first one is from Chris Towers, and as usual, what we've done is we've gone back to the team to actually get much more intelligent and meaningful responses than I would otherwise potentially give. So on this one, Chris has basically asked about whether it's our intention to graze cattle and sheep on Magpie Bottom in the bottom of Bill again next spring, saying that the decision to leave them until the end of April meant that there were almost no cowslips and primroses, and later instead of thousands of orchids in previous years, only a few dozen survived uneaten. The team have put a lot of effort into responding on this. And basically, if I can summarize it, the answer is that we rotate the grazing regime so that it's more intensive on a kind of 4 to 5 year rotation, and that we can show by looking across the site where we've done this that actually that does actually cause a substantial increase in the flower load, as it were, within the meadows. It does occasionally remove some spring flowers, but many of them will actually reflower later. And as the other thing that they mentioned, but I will also second, is that in an increasingly changing world, where I've got something saying that we need to turn up the volume, by the way, I don't know if you've seen that. In increasingly changing, unchangeable climate, it's going to be more and more difficult to guarantee what result we're going to get with a certain grazing regime. And obviously in smaller sites where we are kind of locked into a more prescriptive form of management, there will be winners and losers. And sometimes we are not going to be able to guarantee that a site looks like it did 10 years ago. We will lose species, there is no doubt about it. Things will look different. So the grazing team absolutely do their best. We do have evidence that the approach has worked. We think it will continue to work, but I'll put it out there as well, where we've got severe droughts, severe rain events, all of these things will increasingly affect what we see on our reserves, and it will start to look different. But thank you for the question, and the estates team also giving a presentation after this, so you'll hear more about such things in due course from the experts. Jeff Hamilton asked about redundancies and cost cutting of last year. I think actually we've talked a lot to this already at multiple levels. Obviously, it's never something that we want to do. Is it possible to say that we are not going to experience such unexpected events again? In terms of what the unexpected event was, I'll go back to the biodiversity net gain thing. Actually, we were expecting £1 million worth of income. We were pre-contract on a biodiversity net gain deal, which would have put that money towards the long-term management of Queenstown. Literally, the ink was almost on the paper, and then we had the election called early. And as a result, the buyers basically just were told, because they were a government arm's length body, they were told they could not spend any money because there was a spending review going on. And of course, that was all completely unpredictable. So it's an illustration of the fact that, we do live in incredibly challenging times. If you think about the political situation we've had over the past 3-4 years, the number of changes of government, the changes in approach, we're trying to kind of forecast this, of course, all the time. We're trying to buffer against it, as we've discussed, but we're not always going to be successful. And it was in a year when we were also investing heavily in, other operations, in other income generating bits of the group. So it was very unfortunate. None of us want to do these things, but we will always have to act as a business in the best interest of the business as well. We need to ensure the survival of the trust. And if push ever did come to shove again, we'd have to look at similar things. As I say, others are doing this now, and it's much, much deeper and worse than what we had to go through. So we absolutely don't want to do it again. We will try our absolute best. but there are no guarantees in such a challenging context. On the volunteer newsletter, there, I believe, have been some issues which have been identified, and we're actually seeking to resolve them through the way that we are consolidating our volunteer data onto our new customer resource management system, Razor's Edge, and we're hoping that that will take care of these issues. This is being led by our CRM manager, and we're hoping to restore consistent volunteer communications as quickly as possible. But if you think you're not receiving the newsletter, please do contact our volunteer manager, Abby, who will be able to make sure that you get the newsletter in question. So apologies on behalf of the team. We are seeking to resolve this. Martin Selby, I think this is the final question, has then asked about the loss of insects, saying that as we all would agree, the loss of insects is a really serious issue. It does ripple down through the food chain. It is a loss that's happening globally, not just here in the UK. And what can we do to increase the awareness of this, and hoping Sparks of Action should address it. So we are taking loads of action to address this. As you say, Martin, this is something that is much, much broader than anything to do with Kent Wildlife Trust, or anything, unfortunately, that is entirely in our control. We do, however, run Bugs Matter, which is one of the largest citizen science surveys of flying insect abundance that there is. We've been running that with Bug Life. It's about to go international, which is pretty exciting. We have 10,000 registered users, so we're monitoring what's going on in a really innovative and useful way. So please do take part in that. That's to do the splats that you get on your registration plate of the car, and we're increasingly automating that. So that's an area where AI is actually becoming useful and quite interesting. We have partnered with OpenReach, who are the owners of the UK's second largest fleet of vehicles, who will be doing that as a corporate partnership with us. We've got sponsorship to take this out to France now through Amazon Web Services. So it is a quite exciting area, despite the fact it's also a terrifying issue. We even got mentioned by David Attenborough at the beginning of the BBC Wild Isles. We've prompted a parliamentary inquiry, which we've been involved with people like Chris Packham and David Goulson, which was run in 2023. None of this, unfortunately, to my mind, is actually going to resolve this problem. What is going to resolve the problem is going back to what we were talking about earlier, which is putting 30% of land and sea into thriving nature. That is the only way that we are going to give ourselves that security. And I would roll that out to food security. So again, coming back to there for me is absolutely no paradox between having 30% of land in better condition for nature and providing food to the nation. In fact, I would say that doing that should make the chances of maintaining that food supply stronger, because we'll actually have pollinators and natural enemies and other things which otherwise make our crops much more vulnerable to pests, which is much more likely under climate change. So please do continue to support us, get involved in Bugs Matter, continue to lobby your MPs and anyone else who you feel might listen. But in the meantime, let's actually work with all those players I was talking about earlier to actually try and turn this around and get more land under nature positive management. I think that is it. Closing remark.
Thank you, Evan. And well, that leads me to conclude the annual general meeting. We're slightly over time, which I always thought as a chair, your only function was to start and end a meeting on time. So I've failed miserably in that attempt. But look, I just want to end by saying a massive thanks to all of you who have attended in person and online. As I say, I do hope the attractive prospect of listening to the Conservation Estates team will enable you to stay engaged in their presentation after this. But thank you for attending. And obviously thanks to Jamie, Lee and Emma for enabling this hybrid meeting to actually take place. Hopefully it's a much more easy way for people to attend online as well as in person. So massive thanks to them on that. the staff, I mean, Evan summarised the work of a whole bunch of people in Kent Wildlife Trust, and just personally to say thanks for obviously all the work in 2024 during what was a challenging time, and obviously, you know, ongoing at the moment. You know, you should feel very pleased and confident and in the quality of staff, which Sarah alluded to beforehand. So that's great. My thanks also to all the volunteers who've given up huge amounts of time, and I hope that will be many other ways to engage in the future. And obviously our supportive partners like Wildwood and various others, and Dover Castle and English Heritage, who, you know, equally important to our efforts. And finally, from a personal point of view, just my thanks to all my fellow trustees, past and present, for the enormous amount of time they give up, hopefully to the benefit of the trust. So on that note, the AGM is concluded. It's 11:15 now, so I suggest, if I'm allowed, to have 15 minutes to grab another cup of coffee or chat, and then the Conservation Estates team, Paul, Alison and Simon, will start their presentation at 12. So once again, many thanks indeed, and I'll call a conclusion to the AGM. Thank you all.